Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I'm grateful to our embassy in Washington and the ambassador there to have given me this chance to speak in this seminar being conducted in Washington, D.C., United States of America, on this black day of 5th August, when Indians really made changes in their constitution to deprive the Kashmiris of their rights. I personally feel that these changes of 370 removal from the constitution and 35A is a confession of India's defeat because their stance was very, very poor. They have been over the time thinking, and that is how they included this in their constitution, that the Kashmiris will have their own assembly, they will have their own flag, they will have their own constitution, and they will have their own legislation. And any law, federal law, which is to be applied to the Kashmiris will have to be cleared by the Kashmir Assembly. And they thought that by giving this, they will be able to subdue the Kashmiris and defeat their this struggle of independence to get their right of self-determination. But Indians badly failed. They had also admitted their senior leadership earlier decades, in the earlier decades, had really realized that if they put 35A, for example, that their land cannot be sold, and that the population, the demographic pattern will not be changed, that the outsiders will not be allowed to live and all that. And they thought that they'll be able to overcome the Kashmiris and over a period of time. But when these Kashmiris stood up and they fought for their rights in line with the UN Charter and the UN resolution, then the Indians realized that they have failed in their campaign, and that is how then they took this action. This is so unfortunate. Now, to just give you the background, I'll take you back to the beginning of 20th century. There were so many conflicts, there were clashes, there were battles, which culminated into First World War in the second decade of 20th century. And in that, when many valuable lives were lost, millions of people were really butchered, and many were displaced, and properties were destroyed, and so on. So the world leaders realized that they need to have some arrangement for the conflict resolution to bring peace into the world. So in early 20s, then League of Nations was founded, and League of Nations started working. But again, these big powers, they did not allow League of Nations to effectively do justice to all countries and all members. And that is why the Soviet leader Lenin had once said that League of Nations is nothing else but a thieves' kitchen. And that proved right, because thereafter there was a Second World War, and the casualties were manifold. In crores, people lost their lives. Only 6 million Jews were put into the gas chambers and so on, which was so unfortunate. Because when you talk of human rights, and when you talk of when you talk of international peacekeeping and international conflict resolution arrangements, then this should not happen. So resultantly, after the Second World War, it was realized that because in the Second World War, you know that even the nuclear bombs were used against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Millions of children and women and many people were really, they laid their lives, some in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and many more on the battlefields and all that. So then it was decided to make another organization, and that was called United Nations. And United Nations had been given certain objectives. What were those objectives? One was peacekeeping, conflict resolution, international justice for that matter, human rights. Then, in addition to that, refugees handling, health, education, and so on. The United Nations would have succeeded in doing all this if there was no Security Council, there were no veto powers with few countries, and because this was not democratic setup, only few countries could decide the fate of the entire world, and the conflicts were on and on. The Korean War took place, the Vietnam War took place, then Arab wars, the Gulf wars, Afghan wars, and so on. And many lives were lost. And even in the subcontinent, you have seen that we have had 4 duels with our neighbor Indian on this Kashmir issue. And finally, many lives, valuable lives were lost. So I think this arrangement has again failed. And why it has failed is one that I've said, this veto power with only few, and no justice, no international justice at all. You can only go to International Court of Justice if other party agrees. But if the other party if you are the victim, the other party is an aggressor, they will not like to go to the international court. So there are inbuilt problems, and the United Nations needs to be reorganized. After having said that, I would also say that in addition to that, our many things that have been happening thereafter, we have seen that they have all fallen prey to international global tensions. Blocks were made, and that purpose has not been achieved even till today, because there is a tension. And the oldest issue is the Kashmir issue, which has not been resolved. There have been there is a UN Charter, there are UN resolutions, there are Human Rights Council has given certain verdicts, there are Geneva Convention and so on. But you know what is happening with Kashmiris in India. Their leaders are behind bar, lifelong Yasin Malik and so many others. Burhan Wani, a youngster, just very young, of 22 years age, he was butchered and riddled. There were pellet guns fired into the eyes of young girls, and there have been rapes, and there have been abductions, and they have been denied. And now after this is that they are making a well thought out change in the demographic pattern of Kashmiris, and they are the victims. India, unfortunately, although they call themselves as the largest democracy in this world, but look at that, the Khalistan people, the Sikhs are not happy. And what has happened in Manipur in the recent past, and it is still happening for the last 3-4 months, 181 people have lost their lives. And more than 400 churches have been burnt and destroyed and so on. This is a anti-Christian sentiment, and the fights are on and on. And here in Kashmir against the Muslims, and everywhere you take Maoist, you take Nagaland and Assam movement and so on. So these are on. I'll not take much time, but I would like to just then make few recommendations in the end with regard to this day. One is that first of all, I think country like Pakistan, which is in the forefront for the Kashmiris cause, and it will remain in the forefront for the Kashmiri cause, need to have internal stability and economic consolidation and prosperity, because we have to be strong at home. Secondly, we have to work with the international community, and we have to contact the different at the diplomatic level, and an effective exterior maneuver highlighting the atrocities and human rights violations being committed in Kashmir. So this is our internal. So first of all, we have to look inward and make sure that we are strong. Secondly, the UN Human Rights Commission report had said that Kashmir is an issue which is not frozen in time, and it will not freeze in time if it has not been frozen in last 75 years. So therefore, I think it is an indigenous move, and this must continue, and we must provide our moral and political and diplomatic support to them. Secondly, we must make all attempts that UN must get their resolutions implemented if it has to be effective. Because you make a resolution, if it is not implemented, then United Nations Charter Chapter 7 lays down 3 conditions. One, that first of all, if a country is not cooperating, you do their diplomatic isolation. And if still that doesn't work, then you go for economic strangulation. And if still that doesn't work, then there is a use of force at the level of the United Nations to ensure that human rights are restored and the communities are not suppressed. Then we should also use all the platforms, not only OIC, because Muslim countries are there and they keep supporting. We have to also work in the European Union. We also have to work in the African Union, in the African continent. These countries all have votes in the United Nations. We have to also work in South America. There are many countries very sympathetic to Kashmiris, and they want that the human rights should be protected, and they know the atrocities being committed there. Pakistani diaspora abroad can play a pivotal role, and Pakistani diaspora needs to be updated, and all the information must be provided to them. Then when I came as a special envoy of the Prime Minister in 2016 on Kashmir to United Kingdom, and when I came back, I in my report I said that we must have the Kashmir commissions in every embassy, in every high commission. We have Kashmir desks, and on this desk all the material should be available, and they must organize all the protests and so on. Then UN Human Rights Council should be urged to establish a commission of inquiry to conduct independent international investigation in allegations of human rights as recommended by UNHRC in its report dated 18th June 2018. Then I would also say that one more recommendation. Yes, we should inform the world through international media that in a globalized environments, the regional issues cannot be compartmentalized. Because if today there are 4 flashpoints in the world, which are nuclear flashpoints, which can upset the global peace and jeopardize that. One is South China Sea, for example. Number 2 is Ukraine. Number 3 is Israel and Palestine. And number 4th, last but not the least, is Kashmir. So therefore, if the 2 nuclear powers get into that conflict, then it is not only the region which will be affected, but also global effects will be also there. Similarly, if peace is essential in Afghanistan, it is also essential in Kashmir, and it is also essential in Middle East. Thirdly, the other recommendation is that RSS should be declared as a terrorist organization. We must make an endeavor internationally. Their hands are full. And at one time there was a Congress government. Then came BJP. And then came the hardcore BJP in the form of Modi, who had burned alive about 2,000 Kashmiri Pakistanis in Gujarat. And there was a restriction on their visa to visit United States of America and the West. But today it is not even Modi, it is RSS, a state within the state. and their mission is well understood. They only want Hindu India. No other community, no other minority has the right to exist, and they don't make any bones about it. They say it very vocally that it is for Hindus and others have no place here. The Foreign Office should follow a proactive policy, not a reactive policy. And it is better to initiate ideas and move forward. Arundhati Roy is a Indian very famous journalist. She wrote an article in New York Times on 15th August 2019. And in that she said few things that I would like to quote. One, I quote it, she said, silence is the loudest sound. So if there is silence in Kashmir, they should not take it that there is a calmness. That is the loudest sound. She also said RSS is a state within Modi state. She also said no single year since 1947, there has been no single year since 1947 when Indian army not deployed against own people. Every year, and even today, more than about 1 million people are deployed in different duties in Kashmir, in Assam, in Manipur, and in Hyderabad, Nagaland, Mizoram, and Sikhs. So these are the things I tell you their own journalists are saying. So these are few things that I wanted to say, and once again I would reiterate that Pakistan and all countries, peace-loving countries who want to make United Nations a success, they must work for UN independence, and they must stand with all oppressed and suppressed nations. May these be Kashmiris or Palestinians, or maybe Christians or any other community in any part of the world. Because if today they are under stress, tomorrow some of us will be under stress. So with that, I would thank you very much. So nice. I am so grateful.